The grand ballroom of the Waldorf Astoria in New York City shimmered under the glow of crystal chandeliers, their light refracting off polished silverware and the glossy surfaces of mahogany tables. It was a Thursday evening in late September, and the air buzzed with the kind of electric tension that only a high-stakes deal could generate. Logan Pierce, the 42-year-old CEO of Apex Innovations, stood at the head of the room, his tailored navy suit impeccable, his dark hair streaked with just enough silver to suggest wisdom without age. His sharp green eyes scanned the room, commanding attention from every corner. At his side, a massive screen displayed a cascade of code, the beating heart of a $150 million joint venture with Hayashi Technologies, a Japanese conglomerate eager to dominate the artificial intelligence market. The deal was monumental, a fusion of Apex's cutting-edge neural network algorithms with Hayashi's manufacturing prowess, promising to redefine AI-driven automation. Investors in sleek suits and silk ties leaned forward in their seats, their faces a mix of anticipation and skepticism, while representatives from Hayashi, dressed in understated elegance, scribbled notes and whispered among themselves. The room smelled faintly of roasted duck and truffle oil, the remnants of a 5-course meal served by a silent army of waitstaff who moved like shadows between the tables. Logan's voice, smooth and commanding, filled the space as he walked the room through the algorithm's core. A predictive model so advanced it could anticipate market shifts with uncanny precision. "This," he said, pointing to a line of code glowing on the screen, "is the future. This is why we're here tonight." His confidence was infectious, and the investors nodded, their murmurs of approval rippling through the room. But not everyone was convinced. In the corner, balancing a tray of crystal flutes filled with sparkling water, stood Emily Harper, a 28-year-old bartender working a double shift to make ends meet. Her black apron was crisp, her auburn hair pulled into a tight bun, but her hazel eyes betrayed a restlessness that didn't belong in the world of service. Emily wasn't supposed to be here, not in the thick of a deal that could shift the tech industry's landscape. Her job was simple: pour, serve, smile, and stay invisible. But as she glided past Logan's table to refill a glass, her gaze flicked to the screen, and her heart stuttered. The code, those elegant lines of logic and mathematics, was wrong. Not just slightly off, but catastrophically flawed. A single misplaced parameter in the neural network's loss function would cause the model to overfit, rendering it useless in real-world applications. The error was subtle, buried in a sea of brackets and variables, but to Emily, it screamed like a siren. She froze her tray, trembling slightly in her hands. Once she had been a prodigy, a scholarship student at MIT, her name whispered in academic circles as the next big thing in AI research. But life had other plans. When her younger brother Noah was diagnosed with leukemia at 15, Emily dropped out to care for him and support their single mother, who worked 2 jobs to keep them afloat. The lecture halls and coding labs became distant memories, replaced by late nights behind a bar, mixing martinis and dodging drunken advances. Yet as she stared at Logan's code, the old instincts roared back. She knew that algorithm like the back of her hand. She'd written something similar in her final year at MIT before everything fell apart. Her mind raced. Speak up, and she risked her job, her reputation, everything. Stay silent, and she'd let a $150 million deal implode, along with the hopes of everyone in the room. The weight of the moment pressed against her chest, her pulse hammering in her ears. Logan was still talking, his voice a steady cadence as he outlined the algorithm's scalability. "This model," he said, gesturing to the screen, "will process data at a rate." "That's wrong!" Emily blurted, her voice cutting through the room like a knife. The words escaped before she could stop them, and the ballroom fell silent. Every head turned, eyes narrowing at the bartender who dared interrupt a billionaire in the middle of his pitch. Logan stopped mid-sentence, his hand frozen on the laser pointer. His gaze locked onto Emily, sharp and unyielding, like a predator sizing up an intruder. "Excuse me." His tone was polite but edged with steel, the kind of voice that could silence a boardroom. Emily's throat tightened, her tray wobbling as she set it down on a nearby table. Her manager, a wiry man named Carl, shot her a look that promised consequences. "You're out of line, Harper," he hissed under his breath, but Emily barely heard him. She stepped forward, her heart pounding but her voice steady. "The loss function," she said, pointing at the screen. "You've got the regularization term inverted. It'll cause overfitting. The model won't generalize. It'll crash under real-world data." A murmur rippled through the room, half amusement, half disbelief. One investor, a man with a silver beard and a Rolex glinting on his wrist, let out a dry chuckle. "Are we taking coding lessons from the help?" Now he muttered loud enough for the table to hear. The Hayashi representatives exchanged glances, one of them leaning forward to whisper in accented English. "Is this true?" Logan's jaw tightened, his pride flaring. He was Logan Pierce, the man who'd turned Apex Innovations into a tech empire in less than a decade. He didn't make mistakes, not like this. He wanted to dismiss her, to wave her off as an overzealous nobody, but something in Emily's eyes stopped him. They were steady, unflinching, and filled with a certainty he couldn't ignore. He turned back to the screen, his mind racing through the code. Line by line, he traced the logic, and then it hit him like a punch to the gut. She was right. The error was small, a single inversion in a complex equation, but it was enough to derail the entire model. If the deal had gone through with that code, the project would have collapsed within months, costing him not just the contract, but his credibility. The room was still, the air thick with tension. Logan set down the laser pointer, his hand steady, but his mind reeling. For the first time in years, he felt the ground shift beneath him. He turned to Emily, his voice low but clear. "How do you know this?" Emily straightened her tray, forgotten on the table. "I studied computer science at MIT. She said, her voice steady despite the eyes boring into her. "I worked on similar models before I had to leave." The room buzzed with whispers. The investor with the Rolex leaned back, his smirk fading. The Hayashi team scribbled furiously, their expressions unreadable. Logan studied Emily for a long moment, his mind racing. He'd built his empire on precision, on being the smartest person in the room, but this bartender, this nobody, had just outsmarted him in front of a $150 million audience. A slow smile curved his lips, surprising even himself. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, turning to the room, "it seems we owe our thanks to someone far sharper than I gave credit for." A few nervous chuckles broke the silence, but the respect in the air was palpable. Logan turned back to the screen, his fingers flying across a tablet as he corrected the code. The numbers aligned, the logic snapped into place, and the model was whole again. The Hayashi team nodded, their confidence restored. The deal was back on track, and the room exhaled collectively. As the investors clapped lightly, their murmurs turning to praise, Emily stepped back, her heart still racing. Carl, her manager, shot her another glare, but she barely noticed. She'd just saved a billionaire's empire, and maybe her own future. As the evening wound down, the investors mingling with champagne flutes in hand, Logan approached Emily near the bar. She was wiping down a counter, bracing for a reprimand. Instead, he extended his hand, his green eyes as warm with something she hadn't expected, gratitude. "You saved me tonight," he said, his voice low and genuine. "What's your name?" "Emily Harper," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Emily, Logan said, his smile widening. "I don't know what brought you here, but talent like yours doesn't belong behind a bar. Come to my office tomorrow. We need to talk." Her eyes widened, a mix of disbelief and hope flooding through her. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious," Logan said, his tone leaving no room for doubt. No one who can spot a flaw like that in front of a room full of sharks should be pouring drinks. He paused, then added, "I want you on my team." Emily's breath caught her mind spinning. The deal was signed, the investors were appeased, and the night was a success. But for Emily, the real victory was just beginning. As Logan walked away, disappearing into the crowd, she stood frozen, the weight of his words sinking in. The girl who'd given up her dreams was being handed a second chance, all because she'd dared to speak up when no one else would. The sleek glass tower of Apex Innovations loomed over Manhattan's skyline, its reflective surface catching the late morning sun as Emily Harper stepped out of a cab on Monday, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. The events of Thursday night at the Waldorf Astoria still felt like a fever dream, her impulsive interruption, the stunned silence of the ballroom, and Logan Pierce's offer to join his team. She'd barely slept since her mind replaying the moment she'd spotted the flaw in his AI algorithm, a mistake that could have tanked a $150 million deal. Now, standing in front of Apex's headquarters, her worn sneakers scuffing against the polished sidewalk, Emily felt like an imposter. Her black jeans and faded MIT hoodie were a far cry from the tailored suits bustling around her, and the weight of her decision to come here pressed heavily on her shoulders. She'd called in sick to her bartending shift, ignoring Carl's furious texts about reliability, and told her mom she had an errand to run. Noah, her 18-year-old brother, had been the only one she confided in, his eyes lighting up when she mentioned Logan Pierce. "You're gonna work for the Logan Pierce," he'd said, his voice hoarse from his latest round of chemo, but brimming with pride. "Don't screw this up, Em." She clutched her backpack tighter, took a deep breath, and stepped through the revolving doors into a world she'd once dreamed of, but never thought she'd touch again. The Apex lobby was a cathedral of modern design, marble floors, towering ferns, and a digital wall displaying real-time data streams from their AI projects. Emily felt like she'd walked into a sci-fi movie. A receptionist with a flawless smile ushered her to the 42nd floor, where Logan's office overlooked the city like a king's throne. The elevator ride was agonizing, each ding amplifying her nerves. What was she doing here? She hadn't touched code in years, not since she'd traded algorithms for bar tabs to pay for Noah's treatments. What if Logan had changed his mind? What if this was all a mistake? The doors slid open, and she stepped into a sleek, open-plan office, buzzing with activity. Programmers hunched over triple monitor setups, their screens glowing with lines of code, while glass-walled meeting rooms hummed with discussions. Logan was waiting for her near a coffee bar, his casual button-down and jeans a stark contrast to his formal demeanor at the gala. "Emily," he said, his green eyes crinkling with a warmth that caught her off guard. "Glad you made it. Let's talk." He led her to a conference room with a view of the Empire State Building, where a whiteboard was already scrawled with fragments of the algorithm she'd corrected. "I've been thinking about what you did," Logan said, leaning against the table, his arms crossed. "That wasn't just a lucky catch. You saw something my entire team missed. I want you to take a closer look at the project consult for us part-time while we finalize the Hayashi deal. If it works out, we can talk about something permanent." Emily's mouth went dry. Consulting for Apex Innovations. It was the kind of opportunity she'd dreamed of at MIT before life derailed her. "I'm not sure I'm qualified," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's been years since I've worked on anything like this." Logan tilted his head, studying her. You spotted a flaw in a neural network in seconds, in front of a room full of people who get paid to do exactly that. You're qualified. He slid a tablet across the table, the screen displaying the full codebase for the Hayashi project. Start here. Tell me what you see. Emily hesitated, then opened the code. The familiar rhythm of Python and TensorFlow pulled her in like an old song. She scrolled through the functions, her eyes scanning for patterns, and within minutes she felt it again, that jolt of adrenaline she used to get in the MIT labs. But as she dug deeper, her stomach twisted. The error she'd caught at the gala wasn't a one-off. There was something else buried in the data preprocessing pipeline. A subtle manipulation in the feature scaling could allow an external system to inject biased inputs, compromising the model's security. It wasn't just a mistake. It was a vulnerability one that could let someone sabotage the entire system. She looked up at Logan, her pulse racing. This isn't just an error, she said, pointing to the screen. Someone could exploit this. If this code goes live, it's a backdoor for data leaks or worse. Logan's face darkened, his easy confidence replaced by a sharp intensity. Are you sure? He asked, leaning over her shoulder to study the code. Emily nodded, walking him through the logic. It's subtle, but it's there. I'd need to run tests to confirm, but this could bring down the whole project. Logan called in his lead engineer Marcus Reed, a lanky man in his 30s with a permanent scowl and a reputation for being Logan's right hand. Marcus skimmed the code, his expression skeptical. This is speculative, he said, glancing at Emily with barely concealed disdain. You're saying our entire pipeline is compromised because of a few lines? Who even are you? Emily bristled, but before she could respond, Logan cut in. She's the one who saved our ass at the Waldorf Marcus. Let her run the tests. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he nodded, leading Emily to a workstation in the main office. The other engineers shot her curious glances, their whispers following her like a shadow. She overheard one mutter, "Bartender girl, thinks she's one of us now." Ignoring them, Emily dove into the code-running simulations to confirm her suspicions. Hours passed, her fingers flying across the keyboard, her old skills snapping back into place. By late afternoon, she had proof the vulnerability was real, and it could have let a competitor or a hacker manipulate the AI's outputs undetected. When she presented her findings to Logan and Marcus, the room was tense. Marcus crossed his arms, his skepticism unwavering. This could be a coincidence, he said. You're jumping to conclusions. But Logan wasn't so quick to dismiss her. He studied the test results, his brow furrowed. If this is true, he said, we've got a bigger problem than a bad deal. This could be sabotage. He turned to Emily, his voice low. How'd you catch this? Most people wouldn't look twice. Emily hesitated, then told him the truth. I was at MIT on a full ride for computer science. I was working on AI security before I had to leave. My brother got sick, and I couldn't keep up with school and hospital bills. I've been bartending ever since. The admission hung in the air, raw and unguarded. Marcus's expression softened slightly, but he said nothing. Logan nodded, his gaze steady. You're not just a bartender, Emily. You're one of the sharpest minds I've seen. Stay on this. I want you to dig deeper. As the day ended, Emily stayed late, her workstation a lone island of light in the darkening office. She was combing through the codebase when an email pinged on her temporary Apex account. It was anonymous, sent from an encrypted server with a single line, "Stop digging, or you'll regret it." Her blood ran cold. She glanced around the empty office, the hum of the servers suddenly ominous. Someone knew what she'd found, and they didn't want her to keep looking. She saved the email and forwarded it to Logan, her hands shaking. This wasn't just about a deal anymore. Someone inside Apex, or worse, outside it, was playing a dangerous game. As she shut down her computer and grabbed her backpack, Emily felt a mix of fear and determination. She'd walked away from her dreams once, but now standing in the heart of Apex Innovations, she wasn't backing down. Not this time. The Silicon Valley sun blazed over the sprawling campus of the Global Tech Summit, where glass and steel conference centers gleamed like futuristic cathedrals. It was Friday, a week after Emily Harper's bombshell discovery at Apex Innovations' Manhattan headquarters, and the air was thick with the buzz of innovation and ambition. Programmers, CEOs, and venture capitalists mingled in sleek lobbies, their conversations a tangle of jargon about blockchain, quantum computing, and AI. Emily stood at the edge of a crowded exhibition hall, her badge reading Apex Innovations, consultant still feeling like a costume she hadn't earned. She wore a borrowed blazer over her usual jeans, her auburn hair loose for once, but her hazel eyes darted nervously across the room. She was here to help Logan Pierce present the revised AI algorithm to the Hayashi Technologies team, a critical step to secure the $150 million deal. The stakes were higher now, not just because of the money, but because of the anonymous email she'd received days ago. "Stop digging, or you'll regret it." The words haunted her, a shadow that followed her from New York to California. Logan had insisted she come along, calling her the only one I trust to explain this fix. But trust was a fragile thing, and Emily felt it fraying with every step she took into this high-stakes world. Inside a sleek conference room, Logan stood at a podium, his charisma filling the space as he walked the Hayashi team through the updated algorithm. The screen behind him glowed with clean, optimized code, the vulnerability Emily had uncovered now sealed tight. She stood off to the side, a tablet in her hands, ready to jump in if needed. The Hayashi representatives, led by a sharp-eyed executive named Kenji Sato, listened intently, their nods signaling approval. But Emily's attention wasn't on the presentation. It was on the data logs she'd been analyzing since the flight from New York. Late last night, in her cramped hotel room, she'd traced the anonymous email to a server linked to Vantage Systems, a rival AI firm known for cutthroat tactics. The discovery had chilled her. Vantage wasn't just a competitor. They'd been sniffing around Apex's projects for months, rumored to use everything from corporate espionage to poaching talent. If they were behind the vulnerability in Apex's code, this was bigger than a single deal. It was war. As Logan wrapped up his pitch-fielding questions with his usual confidence, Emily's tablet pinged with a new alert. She glanced down, her stomach lurching. The Apex servers had flagged an unauthorized access attempt, a sophisticated probe targeting the same pre-processing pipeline she'd fixed. Someone was testing the system, looking for weaknesses. She leaned toward Logan, whispering, "We've got a problem. Someone's trying to hack the servers right now." Logan's smile didn't falter, but his eyes flicked to her sharp and focused. "Handle it," he murmured, then turned back to Sato with a seamless segue about scalability. Emily slipped out of the room, her pulse racing, and found a quiet corner in the hallway. She logged into Apex's secure portal, her fingers flying across the tablet as she traced the intrusion. The attack was clever, masked as routine traffic, but she recognized the signature. It matched the patterns she'd seen in Vantage's open-source repos. They were probing for the same back door she'd closed. She deployed a patch to block the access. Her hands steady, despite the adrenaline surging through her. By the time she returned to the conference room, the Hayashi team was clapping the deal, inching closer to reality. Logan caught her eye, a silent question in his gaze. She nodded, mouthing, "Taken care of." But the victory felt hollow. Vantage was still out there, and they weren't done. After the presentation, Logan pulled Emily aside in a glass-walled lounge overlooking the summit's central plaza. "What happened?" he asked, his voice low. She explained the hack attempt, the Vantage connection, and her quick fix. Logan's jaw tightened, his usual calm replaced by a quiet fury. They're not just playing dirty. They're trying to bury us. He paused, studying her. You're holding up better than most would. Why didn't you run from this? The question caught Emily off guard, and for a moment she was back in her old life, nights at the bar hospital, bills piling up Noah's frail hand, squeezing hers during his worst days. I've run before, she said quietly. When Noah got sick, I left MIT, left everything I loved. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I lost myself. I'm not running again. Logan's expression softened, and for the first time he looked at her not as a consultant or a savior, but as a person. I get it, he said. I wasn't always Logan Pierce tech god. My first startup crashed and burned, lost everything, including my fiancé. Took me years to climb back. Sometimes you've got to hit bottom to know what you're made of. The confession hung between them, raw and unguarded. Emily felt a spark, a connection she hadn't expected, but before she could respond, Marcus Reed, Apex's lead engineer, interrupted, his scowl deeper than usual. We've got a problem, he said, holding up his phone. The servers are acting up again. The three of them rushed to a secure room set up for Apex's team, where monitors displayed real-time server logs. The attack was escalating, a brute force attempt to overwhelm the system's defenses. Emily dove into the code, her mind racing to isolate the intrusion. Marcus worked beside her, his earlier skepticism replaced by grudging respect, but the tension between them was palpable. This is your fault, he muttered, at one point his voice low, so Logan couldn't hear. You stirred this up with your digging. Emily ignored him, focusing on the logs. She spotted a pattern, a back door in an older module, one Marcus had overseen. Her blood ran cold. Was he involved? She didn't have time to dwell on it. With Logan's approval, she shut down the compromised module, rerouting traffic to a backup server. The attack stopped, but the damage was done. Sensitive data had been exposed enough to give Vantage a glimpse into Apex's core tech. Logan swore under his breath, his hands clenched into fists. We need to know who's behind this, he said. Emily, you're with me. Marcus, get the team ready for a full audit. As the day wore on, Emily felt the weight of the summit pressing down on her. She was out of her depth, a former prodigy, thrown into a corporate war she barely understood. During a break, she slipped away to a quiet balcony, the California breeze a stark contrast to the chaos inside. She called Noah, needing his voice to ground her. You're kicking ass, Em, he said, his weak laugh cutting through her doubts. Don't let these suits scare you. You're smarter than all of them. She smiled, tears stinging her eyes. I'm scared, Noah. What if I mess this up? You won't, he said firmly. You're Emily Harper. You've got this. The call steadied her, but as she hung up, she saw Marcus watching her from a distance, his expression unreadable. Was he just jealous, or was he hiding something? When she rejoined Logan, he was on a call with Apex's legal team discussing a counterstrike against Vantage. We're not just saving this deal anymore, he told her, his voice fierce. We're fighting for the company, and I need you in this fight. That night in her hotel room, Emily pored over the server logs, her laptop screen casting a pale glow across her face. She found it buried in the metadata, a single line of code, a signature left by the attacker. It wasn't Vantage. It was an inside job tied to Marcus's login credentials. Her heart sank. Marcus had been with Logan for years, a trusted ally. Confronting him would tear the team apart, but staying silent could destroy Apex. She saved the evidence, her hands trembling, and emailed Logan with a subject line, "We need to talk, now." As she hit send, her phone buzzed with another anonymous message. You're in over your head." The word sent a chill down her spine, but Emily didn't flinch. She'd faced worse than threats, hospital rooms, sleepless nights, a brother fighting for his life. This was her chance to reclaim what she'd lost, and she wasn't backing down. Not now, not ever. The New York skyline glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Apex Innovations' Manhattan headquarters, a constellation of lights against the early October dusk. Emily Harper stood in the same conference room where just 2 weeks ago she'd uncovered a vulnerability that nearly sank a $150 million deal. Now, the Hayashi Technologies contract was signed, the ink dry on a partnership that would reshape the AI industry. The victory should have felt triumphant, but Emily's chest was tight with uncertainty. The anonymous threats, the server attacks, and her discovery of Marcus Reed's involvement weighed heavily on her. She'd forwarded the evidence to Logan Pierce the night before, and he'd called her back to New York for an urgent meeting. Her borrowed blazer felt tighter today, her hands fidgeting with the badge that still read consultant. She wasn't sure what came next, whether Apex was her future or just a fleeting detour from her life of pouring drinks and paying hospital bills. Logan stood at the head of the room, his usual charisma tempered by a quiet intensity. "We did it," he said, addressing Emily and a small circle of trusted engineers. "Hayashi's on board, and the algorithm is bulletproof. Thanks to you, Emily." His green eyes met hers, and for a moment she felt the weight of his gratitude. But the moment passed, and he gestured to a tablet on the table. "Now we deal with the fallout." The fallout was Marcus. Emily's evidence, a trail of metadata linking the server attacks to his login credentials, had forced Logan to confront his lead engineer. Marcus sat across the room, his lanky frame slouched, his scowl replaced by a tight-lipped silence. Logan didn't mince words. "You've got one chance to explain," he said, his voice low and dangerous. Marcus's eyes flicked to Emily, a flash of resentment crossing his face before he spoke. "It wasn't sabotage," he said, his voice strained. "I was careless. I reused an old API key, left it exposed in a repo. Vantage must have found it." Emily's stomach twisted. It was plausible, sloppy, but not malicious. But the anonymous emails, the timing of the attacks didn't add up. She opened her mouth to argue, but Logan raised a hand. "We'll audit every line of code you've touched," he told Marcus. "You're on leave until we're sure." Marcus nodded, his jaw tight, and left the room without another word. The other engineers exchanged uneasy glances, the air thick with distrust. Logan turned to Emily. "I need you to lead the audit," he said. "Full-time. I'm offering you a permanent role, senior engineer, effective immediately." Emily's breath caught. A job at Apex wasn't just a paycheck. It was a chance to reclaim the life she'd abandoned at MIT. But it also meant diving deeper into a world of corporate games and hidden enemies. She nodded, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I'm in." The next few days were a blur of code and coffee, Emily burying herself in Apex's servers, tracing Marcus's digital footprints. She worked late into the night, her desk a chaos of energy drinks and post-it notes. The audit confirmed Marcus's story. His API key had been compromised, but there was no hard proof of intentional betrayal. Still, the anonymous threats gnawed at her. Someone was watching, and they hadn't stopped. On her third night alone in the office, she found a new clue, a hidden log file showing data siphoned to an offshore server during the Silicon Valley attack. It wasn't Marcus. It was someone higher up at Vantage Systems, orchestrating the hits to destabilize Apex. She sent the findings to Logan, her hands shaking with the realization that they were still in danger. But the work was exhilarating, pulling her back to the thrill of problem-solving she'd loved at MIT. For the first time in years, she felt alive, like she was exactly where she was meant to be. On Saturday, Emily took a rare day off to visit Noah at the hospital. He was in remission, his smile brighter than she'd seen in months. They sat in his room sharing a bag of chips, the TV droning in the background. "You're different," Noah said, studying her. "Like you're you again." Emily laughed, but his words hit deep. "I'm scared, Noah," she admitted. "This job, this world, it's huge. What if I can't handle it?" Noah reached for her hand, his grip weak but firm. "You saved $1 billion company. You can handle anything. Don't let fear steal this from you." His words echoed in her mind as she left the hospital, the city's hum a reminder of the life she was rebuilding. Noah was right. She'd spent years running from her potential, hiding behind bar counters and hospital bills. This was her chance to stop running. Back at Apex, Logan called her into his office, a corner suite with a view of Central Park. He looked tired, the weight of the past weeks etched into his face. "You've done more than I could have asked," he said, leaning back in his chair. "The audit's clean, and Vantage is backing off, for now. But this isn't just about the deal anymore. I've been thinking about what Apex stands for." He paused, his gaze distant. "I built this company to change the world, but somewhere along the way, it became about money power. You reminded me what it's like to believe in something bigger." Emily blinked, caught off guard by his candor. "I just pointed out a bug," she said, half smiling. Logan shook his head. "You did more than that. You took a risk when no one else would. That's what makes you different." He slid a folder across his desk. "I'm starting a scholarship fund for people like you who got derailed by life, but have the talent to change everything. I want you to help run it." Emily opened the folder, her eyes scanning the proposal. The Apex Future Fund would support students facing financial hardship with a focus on tech and AI. Her name was listed as an advisor. Tears stung her eyes, not just for the opportunity, but for what it meant. Logan had seen her, not just her skills, but her story. "Why me?" she asked, her voice thick. "Because you get it," Logan said simply. "You know what it's like to fight for a dream, and I trust you to help others do the same." The words settled over her, a quiet affirmation of the courage she'd doubted for so long. She nodded, unable to speak, and Logan smiled, a real smile, not the polished one he used for investors. "Welcome to Apex, Emily. For real this time." That evening, Emily walked through the Apex Labs, a sprawling space of blinking servers and humming monitors. Her new office was small, but hers a desk, with her nameplate, Emily Harper, Senior Engineer. She ran her fingers over it, the weight of the moment sinking in. She thought of Noah, of her mom working double shifts, of the years she'd spent believing her dreams were gone. They weren't. They'd just been waiting for her to fight for them. She opened her laptop, pulling up the scholarship fund's draft proposal. As she typed, adding ideas for outreach and mentorship, she felt a fire she hadn't known since MIT. This wasn't just a job, it was a purpose. Logan's words echoed in her mind. Believe in something bigger. She did now, more than ever. As she left the building, the city alive around her, Emily's phone buzzed with a text from Noah, "Proud of you, sis." She smiled, the skyline stretching out before her. The threats might still be out there, the corporate wars far from over, but she wasn't the same Emily who'd walked into the Waldorf Astoria tray in hand, afraid to speak. She was Emily Harper, engineer, fighter, dreamer, and she was ready for whatever came next.